you can't change the system tomorrow by yourself, but think about what you can do within your circles. But it has to start with taking care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, including what you put in your body and what you do with your body, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to impact the lives of other people to the degree that you like to.
One of the reasons I love doing this podcast is because each week I get to connect with each of you and bond over the one big thing that we have in common, and that's our shared love of living Plant Strong and celebrating the heroes who continue to mobilize this movement in the right direction. I also know that, like me, you're realizing that we can never really grow together unless we continue to have these important shared learning experiences. This week, we continue our conversations and open dialogue about health, race, and shared human connection with Dr. Jarik Conrad. Not only is Dr. Conrad a human resources expert and consultant, but he is also a certified emotional intelligence expert, an intercultural sensitivity expert, and author of the best-selling book, The Fragile Mind. His life's work is to help others find common ground and develop deep and meaningful relationships, both in the workplace and in society. Despite our vast differences, how can we come together to make our lives better and more fulfilled? How can we, regardless of our backgrounds, foster empathy and understanding? These are some of the questions that we explore in today's eye-opening episode. And did I mention that Dr. Conrad and his family are also whole food Plant Strong advocates? Indeed, as you're going to hear, this man who grew up in poverty-stricken East St. Louis holds a certification in plant-based nutrition and is passionate about helping others develop healthy relationships with food. As Jarik suggests, when you rid your body and mind of unnecessary toxins and processed junk food, it will have a direct positive impact on your emotional IQ and leadership style, both at work and at home. It's also Dr. Conrad's belief, as well as mine, that changing what we eat will also help us forge deeper and more meaningful connections with each other right here in our own communities. And the world could use a little more of that right now, as we all know. Welcome, Dr. Jarik Conrad. We discovered a silver lining through COVID-19 by forcing us to change our 9th annual Plant Stock event to an online format. It has allowed us to reach many, many more plant-curious people around the globe. And right now, the need has never been greater for people to adopt a whole food, plant-based life. This year's event will feature the brightest luminaries in the scientific research, including Dr. Michael Clapper, Dr. Sarai Stanzik, Dr. Michael Greger, my father, Dr. Cobble B. Esselstyn Jr., and a host of other rock stars. Join us for our upcoming online Plant Stock Weekend from August 14th to the 16th. We are packing this live event with science and practical application and offering you a chance for your whole household to learn and cook along with us. We're going to also give you a front row seat to the Esselstyn family farm. And if you can't watch it live, don't worry. Video access is included for a year with every ticket, and partial proceeds will benefit the Esselstyn Foundation, a 501c3. And financial assistance is available for those who need it. Visit plantstock2020.com today to learn more. Dr. Jarik Conrad, I want to welcome you to the Plant Strong podcast. This is season 2. And season 2 is really about welcoming people that have the heart of a hero. And, you know, and reading up on you, reading your book, The Fragile Mind, the beautiful introduction that was given to me of you
through our mutual friend, Dr. Elizabeth Winings.
Yes.
I feel really, really fantastic about having a very open conversation with you. And let me just frame it up right now for people, because obviously right now in America, we have all these conversations that are going on around racism and anti-racism. And I think it's really important that you and I can have a conversation that will bring value to this current narrative. And specifically, I'd like to have this conversation be more around kind of nutrition and health, or lack thereof, that's going on in this country.
Absolutely.
Let me also say, Jarik, that I know that you are so well educated. You're a intercultural sensitivity expert, and I want to say up front that if I say anything that is inappropriate, or like, hey dude, that was not cool, I hope you'll call me on it, and then help me figure out the best way to say it or phrase it, because I don't even want to pretend like I'm nuanced or very good at this.
Well, let me let you in on a little secret as we get started.
Yeah.
You got to take these words, expert. You got to take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. I am studying this stuff. I talk a lot about it, but all of us are still trying to learn as much as we can about human behavior, what makes us tick, and why. And so, same here. If I say something that rubs you the wrong way, I hope you say, "Well, Jarik, when you say that, it feels like this. What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Because if we don't have these open conversations, then we can't move anywhere. And anytime you engage in some discussions, when you start talking about things like race, for instance, it can get dicey for people. But I'm always willing to take that risk, because I'm looking toward the other side of it, where we can all learn and grow together. So don't be worried about that.
Well, that's good. So it's okay if we get a little uncomfortable. It just allows us to get more comfortable down the road.
That's right. Absolutely.
All right, good. So I want to just start out by just a little bit about you, and then I want you to correct me or go back if anything, I missed something or you want to add something. So first, and I think it's important that we say this, you're a Black man, right?
Right.
And to start out, and to start out, because a lot of people are just going to be hearing this on audio and not, right? Is that the correct way to refer to yourself when I reference you?
So I am fine with African American, with Black. I've really been trying to think about these labels, and I'm really encouraging people to use, American from African descent, something like that, because I am, in some ways, I think when you put something before American, it serves as a little bit of an asterisk. And it almost subconsciously makes people think that that's a different kind of American, or lesser of American, or not full American. So I would prefer, even though I'm the only person probably saying this right now, I prefer that we move away from the Asian American or African American or, Latinx American. I would prefer that we say, American of African descent. I want to emphasize the fact that we have that shared experience as Americans. But on a personal note, Black or whatever, that's fine.
Okay. You grew up in East St. Louis, in what's considered probably the most distressed, I think, part of town in America. It's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
Right.
It's had some challenges.
Yeah. And I want you to talk about that. You are, like I said, you're incredibly well educated. You've got a bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois. You have 2 master's degrees from Cornell University, and you've got a Doctor of Education degree from the University of North Florida. Okay, and I know you've got a lot more degrees that maybe you can tell us about, but I'm going to stop there for now. You and your family eat a whole food, plant-based diet.
Absolutely.
And we're going to dive into that. Is it fair to say that today are you the CEO and president of the Conrad Consulting Group?
Yes, I am. I am. So I have the Conrad Consulting Group. I also work full time with an HR software company, Ultimate Software, that's soon to change our name. We've just merged with Kronos. So I am the quote unquote thought leader. I run the thought leadership group for Ultimate Software, where I get to delve into some of these issues around, uh, nutrition and
Yeah.
health and wellness and all of that as well. I spent 20 years as an HR practitioner. So this really gives me a chance to go back to my roots a little bit, but still think about these ideas and try to solve these really, complex problems that we're still struggling with.
Yeah. Um, in 2008, you wrote this book right here, The Fragile Mind,
Yes.
right? And the subtitle is How It Has Produced and Unwittingly Perpetuates America's Tragic Disparities.
Yeah.
And this first came out 2008, and then you updated it in 2015.
You've done your homework, man. I'm impressed.
Well. So in the preface of this book, you wrote, and I quote, "A lot has happened regarding race relations in America since the publication of the first edition of The Fragile Mind in 2008, meaning President Barack Obama, right?
Yeah.
Of course, most notably, yes, the election of Barack. You go on in this updated version to say, quote, individuals who thought that such a momentous feat would open the door to racial understanding and reconciliation in America have to think again." So, I mean, wow. I mean, it's almost like you had a crystal ball. And so, my question to you is, it's 2020. Obviously, we are staring at a racial crisis like I don't think any of us have seen in our lifetimes.
Right.
And my question to you is, how do you view what's going on right now? But before we dive into the nutrition part, I feel like this is kind of the white elephant in the room, and I want to address it.
Yeah, I think, and I'm glad, I'm really glad that you're addressing this. Even though your show focuses on health and nutrition, it's just such an important conversation for all of us to have. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it a little bit. Number one, I view it a little bit differently. I mean, everybody views it differently, right? We all have our own perspective. But because I talk about these issues and I write about these issues, I'm probably going to look at it from a different lens, from a different perspective than your average person that's working every day who doesn't get a chance to talk about these things. So it wasn't that I had a crystal ball. It was that all you have to do is read history.
Yeah.
And you can just follow the pattern in history. When there's some significant achievement as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, some significant milestone, it's immediately followed by some type of retrenchment, right? While there are forces that are pulling for change, there's still those forces that are desperately trying to hold on to the status quo for whatever reason that is. And so just as night follows day, you can know that there was going to be some resistance to this change. It's too much, too soon for some people. It's changing what they know about what America is. So this was very predictable. So I'm not as surprised that we're having these challenges. I'm disappointed that we're dealing with these at such an outward level. I guess I should be happy that what was under the surface is finally coming out so that we can deal with it.
When you say it, but when you say it's such an outward level, do you mean like with the protests and everything like that, or just...
I mean with people's feelings about these issues around race in America. I mean the fact that when you look at hate groups, that those memberships have grown. When you look at hate speech that people used to say kind of maybe in their own homes or in their pockets, now they found their way to social media and sometimes to workplaces. I'm talking about the things that, like what we saw on the streets in Minneapolis, just, what just troubled all of us. So some people who didn't feel as comfortable They knew it wasn't, quote unquote, politically correct to challenge some of these advancements from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint, but they might have been quiet in the past. Some people have been more vocal about hate, really, more vocal about the whole range from hate to skepticism, that whole range. So I think by people being more vocal, I don't know if there are more people who feel that way or if they're just more vocal. But I think many of us who had hoped we had moved past that were disappointed to see that was still there. On the other hand, when you look at the protests in the street, I'm hopeful and I'm encouraged by the fact that the protesters didn't all look like me, right? There were protesters from all walks of life, all backgrounds saying, look, enough is enough. We have to do something. So it's an interesting time, and I think many of us who are Black, and I'm sure that there's some whites who are going through the same thing. We go through this emotional roller coaster. We're hopeful, we see something about that just gives us, some encouragement about humanity. Yeah. But then we see something that discourages us. But then we see something that encourages us. So I think a lot of us are on a little bit of a roller coaster and hoping that at the end of this ride, we end up in a better place than we are right now.
Yeah. There is an intensity in the air that I have never felt before. And, between, COVID-19 hitting us right now, between, probably looking at, another, if not one of the greatest recessions, if not depression, and then what's going on with really this racial injustice that has just been taken to a whole nother level. At least we're seeing it now in ways that we didn't see in the past. There's something in the air right now. And I hear you, man. I mean, I can't help I have a very optimistic kind of, nature. Think that good has gotta prevail here and come out the other side.
It will.
Has to.
It will. There are enough people now. There were always more good people than bad people. I've always believed that. Yeah. It's just that, I always try to put myself in somebody else's shoes. If I didn't look the way I do, if I were, grew up in a different situation, born to a different family, and I didn't have to worry about this issue, we have enough to worry about. Everybody has enough to worry about. I got to work hard. Do I look good enough? Am I tall enough? Am I smart enough? Am I attractive? All these kind of things, right? And, it's a struggle for a lot of people. And so the fact that they hadn't paid as much attention to what's going on with somebody that looks like me, I can almost see that could happen. But I think this has now forced people to say, well, wait a minute, this is about humanity. This affects all of us. I probably should do more. I thought that not doing any harm was good enough. And the fact of the matter is, in America, when you've got disparities built into all these systems, like the health care system, for instance, when you have those disparities already built in, if you decide, well, I'm not going to do any more harm, but you don't do any proactive steps to close the gaps, it's impossible to close the gaps. Yeah. And so doing no harm, really maintains the status quo, and the status quo obviously impacts people that look like me in negative ways. Yeah, no.
Yeah. And I think that, before this whole Black Lives Matter really hit like full force, I think that, and I'll speak here, I think that probably most of white America maybe didn't really care, but I can't help but think that now almost everybody knows and almost everybody cares. And of course you're going to have your outliers, right? The hate groups that you mentioned, but I think those are like few and far between, I hope.
Yeah, I believe that. I think what we have to work on, number one, is making sure that we isolate if we're going to isolate anybody, isolate the people who hate. You know what I mean? Like I think we sometimes make excuses for people, and we sometimes try to maybe look the other way and hope that this stuff will go away. It's not going to go away. It hasn't in all these years. I think all of us who want equality, I think all of us have to figure out how can we be a little bit more active? How can we address, sometimes it's people in our families who harbor these old, ideas about inferiority and superiority and all that. It's having conversations sometimes, even with people in our families that we love. So I do believe, Rip, that over time, the positive would certainly outweigh the negative. And I hesitate to say good and bad people.
Yeah.
Because they're just, people are motivated for a whole host of reasons. And my job is, when I'm talking with people about this who may be on the other side, who may be, they don't see things the same way I do. My goal is always to try to get at the root of it. Like where are they coming from? Like, where did those ideas come from? And if I were in their situation, would I have those same ideas? And if that's the case, now I can address them at a human level and start to talk about our differences and how we can move forward. But if I just label them and put them in a box, they're gonna retreat, and then they're gonna come back really defensive, and we'll never move anywhere. So it's tough, man. I try to stay away from, most people do this and most people do that, or all people do this or all people do that, or white people should do this and black people should do that, and that. Because whenever we start putting those labels on, it's kind of a non-starter, because you can't say black people should, or black people feel, or black people, because nobody can speak for all black people. I can't.
Yeah.
We can't say white people do this and white people, because nobody can speak for all white people. So it's interesting, man. I'm weird in that I enjoy talking about this stuff, because it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle that I love to be able to solve.
Yeah. Well, in your book, you actually address that. I mean, you address a ton of stuff in your book. I recommend everybody read it. But you also mention how you don't feel like people are good or bad, but rather they're human, right?
Yes.
And that's really, the fragility of the human mind, right? The fragile mind. And
That's right.
and you also talk about how so many of us, in regarding to race, have been negatively conditioned to race, and probably don't even know it, right?
That's
it's
right.
Just like subconsciously in there, and not even aware of it. So
it's fun to talk about these things when, and I know we're going to talk about, health and the whole plant-based, because there's some tie-in obviously to race there, specifically around health disparities. But it's so fun to take some of these conversations outside of race and to prove some of these points in a different context, and then come back in and lay in race. And then people say, oh, okay. I see what you're saying now. I get it now.
Yeah. And I'll just throw in a great example. So in your book, you do so many great examples, but you talk about how, I think there's a book out there about, why are all the blacks sitting together at the lunch?
Yeah.
But the example you give is, well, if you're in Hawaii and you're wearing like a University of Texas sweatshirt or t-shirt, and you see somebody else wearing that, all of a sudden there's a bond, there's a connection, and you're going to go over to them and say, hey, all right, go Longhorns.
That's right. It's a natural thing. There's something about the human condition that we're attracted to people who have, these shared experiences. There's something very human about that. Look, when we got started, you have your St. Louis t-shirt on. What did I say? Right off the top, like, we're good. This St. Louis. So that is a natural thing. And that's what I mean about how we have to really understand what makes us tick. So if we understand that that's a natural thing, then we can see now how people can stereotype is really a function of the brain, and the brain trying to work as efficiently as it possibly can. So to do so, it puts things in categories and boxes to try to understand the world, because there's so much stimuli out there. We just can't focus on all of it. So if you start to really understand what makes us tick, you can see how we step into some traps when it comes to issues like race. And if you can predict those traps, now you ought to be able to get ahead of them. So my brain is going to want to put things in boxes. So I got to actively work against that. And how do I do that? By really expanding my experiences, with different people. The more experiences I have with people who don't look like me, who don't think like me, who don't believe like me, the less likely I'm going to stereotype by default. My default mechanisms would be overrun by those experiences that I have.
Yeah. So let me ask you one more question before we dive into nutrition.
Okay.
And that is so one of the examples that you gave in The Fragile Mind, as far as, so there's a term out there called white privilege, right? Yeah. But so I think you have discovered in your training, instead of calling it white privilege, because then it makes probably, whites bristle a little bit and all of a sudden they're on the defensive, you refer to it as cultural congruence. Yeah. Right? And that's probably a more palatable way for somebody to hear that. And can you talk about that?
Yeah, because I told you I try to put myself on other people's shoes. I imagine if I were born, a poor white person, born into a poor family in Appalachia or somewhere else, right? And I had to struggle and I had to really work hard, and I was the only one in my family to graduate and go to college, and I've created this middle class kind of life for myself. And then I hear that term white privilege. It might make me bristle, because I might read into that somebody gave me something, that I didn't have to work hard. And that's not what diversity practitioners are trying to say when they use that term. But that's kind of what people can read into it, because they can point to other people who are white, who might have been born into a wealthy family, and say, now that's the person that's privileged, not me. Mm. And what people are trying to say is, look, it's not that somebody gave you something, it's that you haven't had any artificial barriers, any additional artificial barriers set up against you just by virtue of your skin color, like I might have. Yeah. And so given the same amount of work, because I might have to face more obstacles, more barriers over time, you might have fewer people like me that can succeed. And so nobody gave you anything. You worked hard, and nobody's taken away the hard work you've put into accomplishing what you have. But you got to acknowledge that nobody's taken away anything. And an easy example of that is if you take a middle class white person, and if you take a poor white person and even a middle class or wealthy black person, put them on the same outfit, like they're going out to the gym. Yeah. Let them get in a car and drive to the gym. Who's more likely to get stopped? Who's more likely to be looked at, with a skeptical eye? When people see me on the street in some workout clothes, they don't see Dr. Conrad with the degrees on the wall. They see a black man, and whatever they think about what a black man is, they're going to attach that thought process, that perspective will be attached to me. Yeah. So, and people say, well, that's not true. I don't see race. We have study after study of MRI data to show that even if we don't consciously see things like race, we subconsciously see it. And that's part of our wiring as human beings. Our emotions work faster than our cognitive abilities to process those emotions. So we absolutely see these differences. We see whether that person is like me or not like me, because I'm looking for those shared experiences. And the best clue of whether or not we have shared experiences, if I don't know anything else, the best clue I have is what I see. Yeah. And so race becomes this de facto, here's our shared experience. Now, as you talk to people, you might find out, yeah, you look the same, but you don't really have anything in common. Or you look different, but you have a lot in common. But that's not what our 8 brains, these old brains that we have, that's not what our brains see. Our brains see the race first, and we start making associations based on that.
Yeah, let me give you another example that I just saw. You know who a guy named Ronnie Coleman is? 8-time Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
From Dallas. I mean, the guy, he was
Yeah.
He
Built,
was
built like me, right? Built like me, right?
identical. But I think from Dallas, he was a cop, you know, and one of his friends suggested he start lifting, and he goes to this gym. But there's a documentary right now on Netflix called Ron Coleman. You know, it's phenomenal. I recommend people watch it. But he talks about how, you know, he went to college, graduated magna cum laude, right? Very top of his class. He had a propensity for accounting. He tried getting a job as an accountant, right? For 2 years, and everybody said, yeah, you don't have enough experience. You don't have experience. And obviously, right, you change the color of his skin and he's probably going to get hired up like that, right? So, I mean, that to me was just so glaring. But to his credit, or maybe not, he didn't seem to be bitter. He didn't seem to be angry. He wasn't like, you know, God, can you believe it? He was just like, yeah. So he moved on and he decided to become a cop, right? Because the accounting thing just wasn't happening for him.
Yeah.
And obviously he's doing very well today with a line of supplements and things, although his body has been obliterated and he has to use crutches and stuff. You know, he's one of the only men that he was able to squat 800 pounds several times. Incredible. But I digress. But
yeah. No, it's and you know, in each one of those situations, if I were one of your listeners, I might say, well, just because that one person didn't get a job, that doesn't prove anything, right? And maybe it doesn't. But what happens is when you look at these things in aggregate, when you not just take the one example, but now you take tens or hundreds of thousands of examples, and you find out, for instance, which is a true stat, that at every level of education, the Black unemployment rate is higher than the white unemployment rate. At every level of education, the median earnings is higher for whites than Blacks, you know? So when you start compiling all of these things and you see them on aggregate, you start to realize, okay, there's some systemic challenges. There's some structural issues that we have. That's one of the things, Rip, that's so important that I try to make people understand. The inclination when you hear about these kind of issues is to think about your own experience. So I could easily say, well, look, I'm from East St. Louis, you know, one of the most challenging places to grow up in America. And I've achieved, quote unquote, some success. So all you have to do is work hard. That would be easy for me to say, right? And it captures people's emotions. And sometimes people like to say that kind of stuff about me to try and prove that, you know, all you have to do is work hard, racism doesn't exist. But you can't look at one example. If you're doing a math equation and you're plotting out these dots and you got all these dots clustered over here, and then you have one or two way over in the corner over there, those are outliers. You don't really even look at those outliers anymore, right? You focus on where all these clusters are. In real life, we're just data points, right? I hate to reduce us to that, but we're just data points in this regard, and we could be outliers. So I urge people to, to kind of don't focus on your own experience and say, because I did this, or if I were in that situation, I would do that. Look at what happens to most people in that situation. That is what you learn about the human brain and the human condition, right? This is how the brain reacts in this situation, or this is how people have reacted in this situation. And that's where you really start to see the patterns and the trends emerge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You have such a wealth of information in that wonderful brain of yours. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
So let's dive into nutrition.
Now, look, before I mention that, we talked about we're not going to talk about all that other stuff that much.
I know.
See how it happens. People really do want to talk about this if they feel like, you know, it's a no risk, place where we can talk about it and folks are not going to judge us and all that stuff. So I really encourage people to engage in those discussions because they're important and we never have them. But let's go ahead and let's shift to nutrition.
Good. So you are a whole food, plant-based brother of mine.
Absolutely.
You've got you even got your degree in plant-based nutrition from, I believe, Cornell.
Yep. I do have a certification from
Yep.
them.
Yep. So tell me, how is it that a Black man from East St. Louis has now embraced and discovered whole food plant-based nutrition?
Well, partly because of people like you. You're doing all these documentaries and you're putting all this information out there.
Well, you know what? That's really nice. But I will say that I feel like, especially now that the veil has kind of been lifted, that I am not doing nearly enough for the Black community. Not anywhere near. So.
We can talk about that. We can certainly work on that. But certainly the work that your father, I mean, that, all that has been, very, very important. It's interesting. I don't think that I would have been the prime candidate for plant-based nutrition. I mean, I was absolutely a meat eater. I mean, I was meat and potatoes all the way, as was, all of my family. And I've always been very thin. People think I'm thin now, but I was skinny. I was just like skinny, sickly looking skinny. So I thought because I was skinny that I could eat anything I wanted to and I'd be healthy. I was young. I could run all day, play basketball, all day, play tennis, whatever it is. So I didn't think much about nutrition as a young person, but I did watch my family, over time. So many people in my family would have these chronic health issues, and several people in my family have, been overweight as well. But I would watch all these issues and I'm just taking note, of what I'm seeing. And it's really hit me hard when I had, I think my cholesterol was 299.
Whoa.
I had gotten out of college and I think I was in graduate school or just left graduate school, 299. So of course, I think it was when I first got to Jacksonville. So of course the doctors wanted to put me on a statin and I took the statin, and I've never been one that wanted to take medication. So I started to read and started to think about, what could I do, on my own without the medicine. And then I'm still looking at my family and things started to get really bad. I had a sister who had breast cancer and passed away in her mid-30s. I had another sister just a few years later who passed away of a heart attack at 48. I recently, over the last couple of years, have a brother who passed away with prostate cancer. My father died of, throat cancer. My mother just passed away this year with Alzheimer's. So my whole immediate family has had these chronic health issues. And it's not really that unique to my family. When you go back to where I'm from, I remember several years ago going back and going to like a Walgreens or something to help my mother get a prescription filled. And when you got back to the pharmacy, I mean, it looked like they were giving stuff away. The line was so long. I mean, it had extra chairs back there. People are waiting. And you know how when you go to get a prescription filled, they say, oh, sir, it'll be 20 minutes. It'll be 25 minutes. Would you like to stay? Would you like blah, blah, blah? And you say, sure, 20 minutes, I could do it. But when we gave them our prescription, they're like, sir, it's going to be 5 hours. Where can we call you? Because it was just a backlog. And so it was an unhealthy community, just like so many communities that are on the margins in America today. Partly due to this whole notion of food deserts. I'm sure, you've probably covered it on your podcast in the past that, there's some places that just don't have access to fresh foods, or if they do, it's very expensive. So it's cost prohibitive in poor neighborhoods to do that. So that's what got me started, Rip.
Yeah, I want you to come back to that, but so you brought up food deserts.
Yeah.
In your opinion, or what exactly is a food desert? Like, how far away do you have to be from, a legitimate, like grocery store or something like that?
Yeah. Now there's probably a technical definition, with the range, and I don't know that. I think that from my perspective, who can you practically get to a store, particularly if you're in an area that has where it's a poor area where everybody doesn't have their own transportation? Do you have public transportation that is practical, that people can get to a store? So I don't know what the technical definition is in terms of the mileage, but can I wake up today and, is it very easy for me to get to a grocery store where I can have access to some healthy foods? In many places, you have these little shops that just really charge really high prices for the few fresh fruits and vegetables they might have. The little convenience stores, they don't specialize in that stuff, so they mark it up really, really high. So that is a challenge. That's getting a lot better, though, over the last 15 years or so, since I've been really looking at this. It's certainly gotten a whole lot better.
All right. So I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but so you were saying that, so you would go to like the pharmacy and the 5-hour wait, and everybody in your family has now, it sounds like it's close to you, is perished from some sort of chronic Western disease.
So I'm looking around, man, and I've always had, and this is probably the part of what, fueled me to make it out of those challenges in East St. Louis. I've always tried to figure out, how do I learn from the mistakes of other people? Like, I don't want to have to experience all the bad stuff to know it's bad, right? If you did it and this happened to you, I'm going to probably try to avoid the thing you did. And so I started reading at the same time, and I realized that there is this link between, nutrition and some of these chronic health issues. So I decided, let me stop taking this statin. Let me figure out if I can just on my own start eating things that won't cause my cholesterol to go up. And I did. I let go of that statin, and within a year, my cholesterol was back down to like 155.
Woo!
And that was it. So once that happened, I said, not only is this important for me, but I got to find a way to tell more people about that. That's why I got engaged with the eCornell program to go and learn about plant-based nutrition. I hate to give people advice unless I've studied it, the science of it, So I wanted to really understand it before I go out and start to give people advice about it. And obviously, it's been something that's been very important to me. I have 2 kids, a 9-year-old, 6-year-old. They've been 100% plant-based all their lives. My wife, while she was pregnant, was 100% plant-based, had great pregnancies both times. It's just been such a part of our lives. And slowly, as you extend out to our, not our immediate family, but, as you start to get out into, cousins and in-laws and, our external family members, we're starting to see lots of shifts. People are starting to eat a little bit differently. They might tease us about it, but then we secretly find out that they're starting to dabble in plant-based nutrition.
Yeah.
So I hope that we've had some influence, and I've been working hard, Rip, to try and figure out how do I get at the root cause. Here it is. We have all the science in the world that demonstrates, pretty straightforward, that plant-based nutrition is our best approach. That and exercise, obviously, is our best approach to try and avoid these chronic long-term health issues. I mean, all the evidence is there, but people still haven't made that transition. I spent about 15 years studying emotional intelligence. So I've been working hard to try to get at, is it something around emotional intelligence that is the root cause that is really making it very difficult for people to latch on to this science, to take this science and somehow employ it in their daily lives. So a lot of my work has been how do we look at impulse control? How do we look at people's self-awareness, their own self-regard? How do we get at these issues to try to get at, if I can fix these issues, if I can help them improve in these issues, then maybe I can get them to now start to dabble in plant-based nutrition. But it's tough.
As Dr. Conrad has written, every single piece of food that you eat will either help you or hurt you in the long run. The same goes for our pets. Every bit of food we feed our pets will either keep them healthy and active or hurt their chances of having a life filled with energy and vitality. Why compromise your pet's health with junk ingredients and unknown animal products when you can fill them up on a healthy, all-natural, plant-strong diet with clean protein? Try it today by visiting the episode place at plantstrongpodcast.com to claim 50% off your order.
You know, you mentioned the science, right? And I think a lot of people are, for whatever reason, they're skeptical of the science. They don't really understand the different levels of science that are out there, the different levels of studies that are out there. And then you've got the keto and the paleo people that are touting their science, right? Yeah. And so it's almost like, you know, depending upon whatever dietary religion, you know, you're embracing, you can try and find science that supports it. And then you correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but then as a Black person, you also are probably even that much doubly skeptical about maybe information that's out there, maybe even if it's about health and nutrition.
Yeah.
And I think you talked a little bit about that in The Fragile Mind, you know, kind of what's going on there. But
yeah, it's true. And again, it goes back to some of, you know, they have reason to be skeptical in some ways. I mean, you know, Black people have been subject of experiments where, the Tuskegee experiments, for instance, where, you know, people who had syphilis were told by doctors that they were getting medication, but for years they were getting a placebo just so we could study the effect on the body.
Yeah.
And this is one example. There are many examples where the people who were supposed to be helping to take care of you were the people who were exploiting you. And so there's this still lingering skepticism that people have around some in the medical profession. So that's part of it. The other thing too is, you know, when I'm talking to people who look like me, I'm like, look, you know, culture is great. Culture is wonderful. I mean, it's the whole thing about shared experiences, people that like me in some way, that we can talk about these experiences. All that is great, but we got to step back. And I call it the pride and the perils of culture, right? It's a lot to be proud of for whatever your unique culture, however you define culture, right? Whatever that unique aspect of it is. But I look at, here are the things that are helping us. Yeah. Here are the things that are not helping us. The stuff that's not helping us, I don't want to do anymore. And so I am not going to eat, you know, pig feet. I'm not going to eat, you know, we used to call them snoots, but it's a pig snout.
Yeah.
Them snoots, barbecue. I'm not going to eat chitterlings, you know. That stuff has zero nutritional value for me. And so just because my mother and my grandmother and, you know, her grandmother ate that, I'm not going to eat it. And you can't take my Black card away because I decided I'm not going to eat chitterlings. You know, I'm just as Black as you are, right? So I joke with people about that, but culture and tradition and all that is a real strong barrier sometimes for people making the changes that we obviously need to make.
Well, you know, so along those lines, in your book, you tell the story about how when you were living in Florida, I think Jacksonville, you invited, I think your family came down to visit you, and you made just for them, because you were already, I think, either plant-based or vegetarian.
Yep.
But you cooked up a steak for them, I think it was, and you also did some asparagus, and they ate the meat, but they wouldn't touch the asparagus. And I think you said in your book, you said that your mother basically turned to you and said something like, "Man, what are you doing? Are you eating white food?" Something like that.
Right. You eating, this is what white people eat.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have it right here. You say, "Y'all are eating like them," referring to the white people.
Look, I'm trying to be nice to my mother. But yeah, you eating like them. So I think.
But so my question to you is: do you think that Black people then see eating plant-based, or if you're eating like vegan, then all of a sudden you're eating like, white people, which I can tell you, most white people don't eat that way.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that. So I think that there is some truth to that, because it's not how we grew up. It's how we've seen people on TV eat, and people that we've seen on TV don't look like us, so it's like them. And I was getting ready to say it's the same thing when you go into some poor white communities. They might say, "Are you eating like them?" But then they're talking about wealthy whites, right? It's always us versus them in some way. So I think it does apply, but it's fascinating, and that's why. It's certainly legitimate that we've had some issues with food deserts. That's absolutely legitimate. Also, though, even when we've had access to the healthiest foods, is not the foods necessarily that we chose, right?
Yeah.
Like my parents avoided the asparagus. I'm sure in the grocery stores in East St. Louis, they had asparagus. It's just not what we picked, because it wasn't part of how my mother learned how to cook from her mother, and then it wasn't part of the culture. So I've absolutely tried to dismantle that whole thing with my family. And for me, Rip, is even deeper than that. I try not to buy into the commercialism. And so I don't understand why emergency rooms have to be on call, because they know on Thanksgiving night that they're going to have a whole lot of people coming in there with heart attacks, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like that to me is bizarre. I'm not looking forward to the holiday so I can eat myself into a heart attack. That just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And so for us, we just don't tie food to our celebrations in that way. And we especially don't tie unhealthy food to our celebrations. Things are going really great for me, so I'm going to destroy my body with this unhealthy stuff. That doesn't compute for me.
So you got that reaction from your mother. I don't know how long ago was that? Was that 10 years ago?
That had to be 15 years ago.
Okay, so 15 years ago. And so what have you found in the last 5 years? Are you still getting that kind of reaction, or do you have different friends, or your cousins and stuff?
It's absolutely changing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely changing. I travel a lot. I'm usually going speaking, presenting, in some city somewhere. And I always try to go to the local plant-based restaurants. And I always see Black people, even if it's a community that there are not a lot of Black folks in the community. I always see Black people in the restaurant or working in the restaurant. Even amongst my circle. I mean, I'm in 2 different fraternities, and I have a big group of friends. And there are several of my friends that are either 100% plant-based or either trying plant-based part of the time. And at the very least, they're not teasing me anymore about being plant-based. Now, part of it is at this age now, we're getting close to that 50. Some of them have already had some health issues, and that has caused them to look back and say, well, wait a minute, the stuff he's been saying over the last 10 years, maybe we need to think about that. So I'm seeing a shift in a broader community, regardless of your background, race, and all that stuff. I'm seeing more people open to this idea, more restaurants that can cater to a plant-based lifestyle, and absolutely within the African American community, I'm seeing this being something that people are trying. Some of it is celebrity driven. We hear about Beyonce and all this stuff. I know people sometimes they'll listen to celebrity before they'll listen to their doctor.
Yeah.
But it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah. Have you seen the documentary that's out called Invisible Vegan?
I have not. I haven't seen that one.
So I highly recommend it. It's basically narrated and directed by a Black woman, and it's all about the Black culture, and basically overlaps a lot of the conversation that we're having here. But she does a beautiful job telling this story about about nutrition or lack thereof in the Black community, and how things are changing. So it's a beautiful thing.
I'll take a look at it. Because it's absolutely changing. And it needs to, man. We have, I think we mentioned this, but to really put a point on this, if anybody needs to be adopting a plant-based lifestyle, it is us.
Yeah.
Because we struggle in all these areas of chronic health, we struggle. We experience these disparities. Now, it's not just because of our nutrition. Some of it has to do with stress, and there's studies that talk about all of that. But the part that we can control, we ought to be trying to control.
Well, and the stats are, that the blacks are 40% more likely to die from breast cancer, black women, 60% more likely to die from diabetes,
Yep.
30% more likely to die from heart disease. And then, as I think you said, maybe it was your father, right? The amount of prostate cancer in black men is just off the charts.
Yeah. I saw an article several months ago about amputations, and the rise in the number of black people who are having to get amputations as a result of complications from diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, we have got to, and it saddens me to think about people who are going through that struggle. And that's why, again, I'm trying to figure out how do I flip that switch to help people start to make this transition so that they can save their lives and improve the quality of their lives while they're here.
Well, again, I'll say it. I think you'd love Invisible Vegan. And she does it through the lens of a woman, and it's primarily focused towards women.
Yeah.
And it's the first, most documentaries that are out there, I think, are more male kind of, skewed. So it's really beautiful. And I bet if you watch it, you'll get a lot of great ideas, and you should probably try and connect with the director. She seems really dynamic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I'm intrigued. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Are you lactose intolerant?
I say everybody is. But no, I'm not technically. Now, I grew up with asthma until I was about 5. And the doctor recommended that I avoid any dairy products back then. But I think starting in kindergarten, I tasted some ice cream and it didn't do anything to me. So the doctor started to introduce dairy back into my diet. And I think I was fine. I could eat it then. But I don't think as an adult, I've had any negative reactions beyond the fact that I don't think my body wanted the dairy. I didn't have any.
Yeah. No, it's just, I think about that, and I think about how many kids are probably going to school and they're basically being, asked or almost forced to drink their milk when they've actually got a lactose intolerant that is doing them no justice whatsoever. It's almost a form of institutional racism.
Yeah, it is. This is another whole conversation because I do think that that's the thing about the isms, right? They're confined into a particular area of life, right? If you have a certain ideology about a certain group of people, that's going to carry across all aspects of life. So whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's employment, whatever that category is, that ideology will come with you. And there are systems and structures that have been put in place that suggest that some people's lives just don't matter as much as other people's lives. All we got to do is look at the history book to see just blatant examples of that. We are not completely past that point. So yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that we do, some of the ways that we market food toward people, our education system reinforces some of those things. So absolutely.
Yeah.
The poor people get access to the least quality food, right? The food with the least amount of nutritional value.
Yeah. So, we were talking probably 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago about you're like, I'm trying to figure out what that switch is, right? What's the switch? And I think, and I have found that when you can somehow and I'm particularly talking to men right now, because I find women can much more easily embrace this lifestyle and this message.
Yeah.
But men, they're so hung up on their masculinity, right? And if they're not having their meat, if they're not having their chicken, if they're not having their fish, if they're not having their dead animals, then they're potentially going to have their man card revoked, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a black man, you're going to have your black card and your man card revoked, right? But I mean, I think that if you can figure out the right way to spin that and have them realize that, listen, the most masculine way to eat is, you're not going to leave the planet at 35 or 42 from a heart attack or cancer. You'll be around, you're not going to, go down the path with the status quo. You're going to do your own research and then figure it out and then stand for something. I mean, but you got to put your spin on it and figure it out. But
yeah, that's certainly part of it. And I think it's interesting. Some of the last studies I read suggested that women are more likely to dabble in plant-based nutrition, but men have been more likely to stay if you can get them to dabble. So, and partly it's because of that. I got to do it. I'm gonna see this thing through, and it might still relate to that idea of masculinity. But yeah, I found if I could get people to try things that they just wouldn't have come across, that would work. Now, I'm not a big fan, Rip, of the substitutes, burgers, the substitute and all this, because, they, from a health standpoint, some of that stuff, just, but for some people, I'm wondering if that is, some good transition food for them because it tastes like what they were used to in the past. And so for some people, maybe that is the route that they might want to take.
I think you're right. I think that can be a good stepping stone,
right?
To try and bridge the lifestyle and have them go, wait, this is just made from plants, and we don't need to hit a home run on the first day and have them doing, all intact whole grains and, legumes and lentils and all that. Right. But let's just try and get them there.
We got to try to figure it out.
One step at a time.
If I got, one-on-one, I'm pretty effective, but you can't scale that. So I'm in the lab, so to speak, just trying to figure out how do I scale this so that you don't have to have all these individual conversations. So again, I've been working hard. I did a clinical trial with the Mayo Clinic that I can't say a whole lot about now because we're going to be publishing the study soon. But I created a 12-week transition plan and really based it around emotional intelligence. And the participants, they said, look, the most valuable part of this whole thing wasn't necessarily learning about the nutrition. I could have gotten that somewhere. The most valuable part was learning about the emotional intelligence piece. I mean, nobody had made me think about myself that way and why I make the decisions that I do. So examples that I would give people would be, you've had a hard day, things didn't go right at work, you come home, and the first thing you want to do is to bake these cookies that your grandmother used to bake. And that's your comfort food. So you bake these cookies and you start to feel better. I'm urging people to go back and think about, is it really the taste of those cookies that's making you feel better? Or is it that connection to your grandmother? And if it's that connection to your grandmother that really makes you feel safe and makes you feel better, maybe then we can watch some videos, go look through some photo albums, you'll tell stories about your grandmother. Maybe there are other ways to have that emotional need satisfied without having the cookies there. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to get at. How do I help people understand what they're feeling and why they're feeling that way, and not use food as the mechanism to temporarily comfort them? Because, you're still going to have that issue. Once those cookies, the high from those cookies are going away, you still got some issues you got to deal with. So I'm working on it.
No, you are.
I'm not there yet. I'm working.
So do you feel like this, and so it sounds to me like this lifestyle, you being, plant strong, right? Whole food, plant strong, is having an impact on your leadership style. And maybe it like spills over into everything you do.
I think that there is some, now this is going to sound biased, so I apologize for anybody who's listening who's not plant-based. but I think for a lot of people who are plant-based, it's deeper than just the plant-based. It's like, who am I? What am I doing here? I think people are asking bigger questions. And then they start to think about the environmental impact and, what this does to animals. And it's bigger questions than, can I have something good to eat today? So I think that's where it crosses over into really all aspects of my life. I try to be open. If I wasn't open, then I would have never tried the whole plant-based thing, right? I tried to be able to roll with changes. So I got to eat something differently than I used to eat before. I try to have, some confidence in who I am and, assure enough in myself that I can make this change, and other people might be pointing at me and laughing and teasing me, but I feel like I'm strong enough to withstand that.
Yeah.
That's going to carry over to other ideas that I have about work or anything else. So it really is a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking about the world, your place in it, where you are vis-a-vis other species. And, it starts to get pretty deep, man. And I just think that is something that I find in common with a lot of people who are, 100% plant-based. It's bigger than just the food.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is amazing how important food is in our life, and how, depending upon what you eat or what you don't eat, it puts you into a certain like group or subgroup, and people identify you a certain way, and sometimes we even identify ourselves, that way. I mean, like I just think about the bond that you and I have, just because you're whole food plant-based. I mean, that just speaks volumes right there.
That's right. Just off the top, we feel
yeah.
we know each other a little bit
Yeah.
because of that. I do think that it's fun. And I know that I'm going against the grain,
Yeah.
but I really feel like it's important that people kind of somehow can start to put food in better perspective. If we're celebrating somebody's graduation, it's that achievement that we're celebrating. Why do we have to have a big cake there? It's not about that cake. Like, let's say the cake wasn't there. Are we not proud of them anymore for graduating? Like, does that change the whole memory? 10 years from now, we won't remember this person's graduation because we didn't have the cake there. So it's really taking an inventory as to how important food is in your life, like how important food affects your life or food choices. You spend your whole day thinking about what you're going to eat tonight. Just thinking about how you might be controlled today by your food choices, and what the quality of those choices are, and start to try and unravel that. So, the next holiday, that these are the traditional foods that you eat. Certainly, you can find vegan alternatives for those. But what if you just said, look, it's not about the food. It's going to be about the experience and the connections that I have with other people. If you start to somehow untangle that toxic relationship that we have with food, it changes everything. I mean, it really does. I like food that tastes good. I really do like a great meal. I'll drink a smoothie that might not be the best tasting smoothie in the world if I know that it has the nutrients that I need, because that's what my body needs. Yeah. I'm past that. My taste buds are different.
So you said that you got 2 kids, 6 and 9.
Uh-huh.
Boys, girls, one of each. What?
One of each. My daughter is 9. My son is 6.
Okay. And what are their thoughts? Are they excited and proud to be plant-based? Is that something that they wear with pride or not?
So far, we're good, man. Obviously, we wanted to be, sensitive to how it would impact their lives, when they are eating differently than everybody else, and would they then feel withdrawn and all that stuff. And so far, that hasn't happened. I mean, they seem to be proud vegans, and they will tell you, shucks, since the time they were 2 or 3 years old, if you tried to give them something that wasn't vegan and we weren't around, they'll say, hey, That's not vegan. You know, I can't eat that. So at this point, I feel like they're thinking about why they're eating this way. And part of it is they don't want to eat animals because they read about animals. They go to the zoo and see animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my daughter's like, we're looking at these animals at the zoo. The restaurant is right there, and they're eating the animals that we look at. It just didn't make sense to her. So far we're good. We do have to deal with the fact that at everybody's birthday party or at every school event, what do?
Yeah.
They want to bring in some unhealthy food. And so we have to make sure that the school has something in the freezer that they can thaw out and have the kids eat that's plant-based. So it requires us having to make those adjustments. But they have not demonstrated thus far to us that they in any way are feeling isolated because of this. They've expressed that they feel lucky that this is the way that they eat and that it may help them avoid some of those long-term health issues that they have seen in my own family. They've seen it up close.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that it's one of the best gifts that a parent can give and pass on to their children. I'm like you, although I'm substantially probably older than you, but I've got a 6-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And just like you, they're 100% plant strong and have been their whole lives. My wife had all 3 of her pregnancies, all plant-based. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So I want to, you wrote an article in your LinkedIn profile discussing the disproportionate amount of impact that COVID-19 has been having on communities of Black people. And we're gonna link that in our show notes in the podcast.
Yeah.
But just to kind of, what are some of the reasons that you wrote about in that article that make Blacks that much more vulnerable?
Yeah, and you might remember some of them more than me.
Yeah.
But I think we've already talked about the fact that we have a disproportionate amount of chronic health issues. And so in some ways, we're like sitting ducks, right?
It already sets you up, yeah.
We're already set up. So that's one aspect. Another piece, unfortunately, is that because we still have some of these challenges around employment and the type of employment that's available for people of color, we are disproportionately folks that are on what are now, mission critical jobs, like, some of those jobs that, we don't really value, we don't pay attention to. Those jobs have become very important, like some of these hourly jobs that, people have working at the grocery store, keeping the lights on in some organizations with being frontline people. So we're disproportionately situated in the types of jobs that have been essential jobs. So we've been required to go into work. We're not, proportionally, we don't have the types of jobs that will allow people to work from home. So we're likely getting more exposed to COVID at a higher level because we're out in it, because it's our jobs. It's the kind of jobs we have to have. So we're already vulnerable, more vulnerable than the general population, and then we're getting exposed at a higher level than the general population. You put those two together, and it's pretty toxic.
Yeah, and probably not as much. Are you hearing an echo on my end or not? No?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, and then also probably not as much access to healthcare, testing.
That's a big one.
And all those things. Yeah,
that's a big one. So access to healthcare is a challenge. We are less insured. Our percentage of people with health insurance is lower. And then we've already talked about the fact that when I do have access to healthcare, sometimes my treatment in the healthcare system has not been equivalent to somebody else's treatment healthcare system. So it's just You got a whole host of factors that are driving this issue. But my encouragement in that article was, again, the system needs to change, but we can't change that tomorrow, right? We can't fix these structural things tomorrow. This stuff is killing us today. The one thing that we do have control over is what we put in our mouths.
Exactly. I want to read the last paragraph that you wrote, because I thought it was really, really powerful. You said, let's keep shining a bright light on the systemic inequities that contribute to poor health in the Black community and work hard to fix them. In the meantime, let's also control what we can control, what you just said. Every single piece of food that you eat will either help you or hurt you in the long run. Lastly, let's commit to doing what we can to make it much harder for COVID-19 or any other health threat to ravage our communities.
Now that sounds pretty good. That guy did a good job on that.
That guy did a beautiful job. And I just hope it's landing everywhere it needs to land, right?
I hope so. I think maybe the most important message that I'd like to close with is that these are times of uncertainty for a lot of people, right? We don't know about this disease, this virus. We don't know about this virus that's affecting all of us. We don't know what the next steps are going to be as it relates to our challenges with systemic racism and other forms of isms in our society. And for a lot of people, I think they're teetering on the edge of hopelessness as it relates to this. And I wish I could fix that for them. I hate that people are feeling that way. And I'm just hoping that people can just, stand up, put one foot in front of the other and just carve out your little area. You can't change the system tomorrow by yourself, but think about what you can do within your circles. But it has to start with taking care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, including what you put in your body and what you do with your body, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to impact the lives of other people to the degree that you like to. So the first step is, what are my thoughts and my behaviors? How am I taking care of myself? And then try and figure out, what am I uniquely situated to do? From where I sit today, don't want to be too ambitious because it's harder to do it sometimes, to take the first step. But from where I sit today, what am I uniquely qualified to do as it relates to recognizing the humanity in all of us and ensuring that all of us have an equal access at success in America? Mm-hmm. I think we all have a part to play. We just got to figure out what that unique part is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you very much. Well, I tell you what, let's do this again. Again. I'd like to check in with you again in a couple months, and we'll see where we are, and hopefully we're making progress on all fronts.
Perfect. That would be great. Things are changing rapidly week to week, so hopefully we'll be in a good place by then.
Yeah. So, Dr. Jarik Conrad, it has been my pleasure having you on the Plant Strong podcast. I want to thank you for sharing this really important conversation with me at this very kind of crucial time with everything that's going on in this country. And I'm sure that there's some people that are out there that are listeners of the podcast that will take great value and comfort in this conversation.
Well, I appreciate it. I can't thank you enough for having me on. I've been a fan, from afar. So I'm glad to get an opportunity to meet you. And again, thank you for the work that you've been doing to spread the message.
Thank you. So let's do the sign off. We go peace.
Peace.
Engine 2.
Keep
it plant strong. Give me a fist bump. There we go. Yeah.
All right. That works. All right. Take care, Rip.
Thanks so much for listening to this important episode. And thank you, Jarik, for your optimism, enthusiasm, hopefulness, and and expertise. Only by truly understanding and accepting our past can we form better and more positive relationships with each other. We're all looking for shared human experiences, and it is my sincere hope that you enjoyed this one today. Don't forget, plantstock2020.com is the website if you're looking for a shared experience with me and the Esselstyn family from August 14th to the 16th. We'll see you soon. Peace, Engine 2. Keep it plant strong. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Lori Kordowich, Amy Mackey, Patrick Gavin, Wade Clark, and Carrie Barrett. I want to thank my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Ann Kryle Esselstyn, for creating a legacy that will be carried on for generations and being willing to go against the current and trudge upstream to the causation. We are all better for it.